There's a particular form of stupidity that afflicts intelligent people, accepting decisions as inevitable simply because everyone else accepts them. Charlie Munger spent decades studying why smart individuals make predictable errors. And he discovered something unsettling. Most financial damage doesn't come from spectacular failures. It comes from unexamined choices that society labels as responsible. Consider the life script most people follow without question. Attend university regardless of cost. Buy a home as soon as possible. Upgrade your lifestyle with each promotion. Marry and have children on society's timeline. Purchase new cars. Maintain appearances that match your professional status. And retire at 65. These aren't presented as options. They're presented as inevitabilities, markers of maturity and success. Munger understood what most miss. Incentives shape behavior, and the incentives promoting these choices rarely align with your financial interest. Universities profit from convincing you that education justifies any debt load. Real estate agents, mortgage lenders, and an entire industry benefit from the belief that renting is throwing money away. Car manufacturers and advertisers spend billions ensuring you associate vehicle purchases with identity and status. The wedding industry, baby product companies, lifestyle brands, all have systematically conditioned you to believe certain expenditures are non-negotiable aspects of a well-lived life. The psychological mechanisms making these choices invisible are well documented. Status quo bias ensures you follow the path of least resistance, the path everyone else follows. Authority bias makes you trust institutions, parents, and cultural norms without demanding evidence. Social proof convinces you that if millions make the same choice, it must be correct. Availability bias ensures the few examples of alternative paths remain invisible, while conventional success stories dominate your field of vision. Here's what makes this particularly insidious. Questioning these choices feels irresponsible. Suggesting that a prestigious university might not justify 6 figures of debt sounds like you're dismissing education's value. Analyzing whether home ownership makes financial sense for your specific situation gets interpreted as lacking ambition. Deciding against immediate parenthood based on financial unpreparedness gets labeled selfish. The social pressure isn't subtle, it's crushing. Munger recognized that truly independent thinking requires examining the foundation beneath common wisdom. Most people never ask, who benefits from my accepting this as inevitable? What would I do if I started from first principles? What am I not seeing because everyone around me has already decided? The tragedy is that people who'd never make a significant business investment without rigorous analysis will commit to decisions affecting decades of their financial life based purely on cultural expectation. They'll sign a mortgage representing 12 times their annual income after a weekend of house hunting. They'll finance a wedding costing more than their annual savings because you only do it once. They'll accept a 70-hour work week to maintain a lifestyle they adopted because their peer group adopted it. These aren't moral failures, they're failures of analysis, and Munger's great insight was that avoiding stupidity matters more than seeking brilliance. The question isn't whether these choices are wrong for everyone. The question is whether you've actually examined them for yourself or whether you've simply absorbed what everyone else does and called it decision-making. The choices that society presents as normal often carry invisible price tags, not just in immediate cost, but in compounding consequences that reshape your entire financial trajectory. Understanding these consequences requires looking beyond the surface-level analysis most people consider sufficient. Munger's approach to complex problems was methodical. Invert, always invert. Instead of asking, "What should I do to succeed?" ask, What choices guarantee I'll fail? When you invert the standard life choices and examine their long-term consequences, the picture that emerges is disturbing. Take the seemingly responsible choice of home ownership. Society frames it as wealth building and financial maturity. But examine the actual mechanics. You commit to a 30-year mortgage, immediately surrendering flexibility when career opportunities arise in other cities. You've converted liquid savings into an illiquid asset that costs you property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and opportunity cost on your down payment every single month. You've assumed concentration risk, a massive percentage of your net worth in a single geographically fixed asset. The opportunity cost alone is staggering. That down payment, had it been invested in a diversified portfolio over 30 years, compounds differently than home equity. The monthly difference between your mortgage payment, including all home ownership costs, and equivalent rent, often substantial, represents capital that could have been deployed elsewhere. Over decades, this difference compounds into seven-figure sums. But the deeper cost is optionality. Munger understood that preserving options has enormous value. The homeowner who receives an exceptional career opportunity in another city faces friction the renter doesn't. Selling costs 6 to 8% in transaction fees. Market timing risk means you might need to sell in a downturn. The psychological attachment to your home creates inertia precisely when mobility would serve you best. You've purchased an asset that actively works against the career flexibility that typically generates the highest returns on human capital. Consider lifestyle inflation, the automatic upgrading of consumption as income rises. This appears harmless, even natural. You earn more, you spend more, but examine the mathematics. If you earn $60,000 and save $10,000 annually, you're saving 16.7% of your income. Get promoted to $90,000, increase spending to $80,000 while saving $10,000, and you're now saving 11.1%. You're earning 50% more, but moving backward in the only metric that matters, the gap between what you earn and what you need. The compounding effect is exponential. Saving an additional $15,000 annually from age 30 to 60 at 8% returns generates approximately $2.4 million. That's not from heroic investment returns, it's from simply not automatically upgrading your lifestyle. Yet the social pressure to signal success through consumption is precisely calibrated to prevent this. You're surrounded by peer groups spending at the top of their income range, making restraint appear like deprivation rather than wisdom. The marriage and parenthood timeline represents another unexamined financial commitment. This isn't about whether these choices have value. It's about whether their timing is driven by analysis or by social expectation. Having children in your 20s or early 30s before establishing financial stability means decades of reduced savings capacity during your peak compounding years. A child costs approximately $300,000 to raise to 18, but the opportunity cost, what that money could have become if invested during your highest return years, multiplies that figure several times over. Munger would ask, what's the actual rush? Social timelines are arbitrary. Biology creates certain windows, but they're wider than cultural pressure suggests. The difference between having children at 28 versus 35 isn't just 7 years. It's potentially the difference between financial independence at 50 versus working until 70. Educational debt deserves particular scrutiny. The narrative is bulletproof. Education is an investment in yourself, and you can't put a price on knowledge. But Munger would immediately identify this as motivated reasoning serving institutional interests. A $200,000 undergraduate debt at 6% interest costs $2,200 monthly over 10 years, $264,000 total. That's $264,000 that won't compound in your 30s and 40s. The opportunity cost at 8% annual returns over 30 years, approximately $2.6 million. The question isn't whether education has value. It's whether this specific educational expenditure generates returns exceeding its true cost, including opportunity cost. Many prestigious degrees lead to careers paying $60,000 to $80,000 annually. The math simply doesn't work. You've spent your highest compounding years digging out of a hole rather than building wealth. What Munger understood about all these choices is that they share a common structure. They convert flexibility into commitment, liquid assets into illiquid ones, and high opportunity periods into constrained ones. Each individually might seem manageable. Combined, they create a financial prison disguised as a responsible life. The cumulative effect is that by 40, many high-income professionals discover they have impressive credentials and minimal financial freedom. They cannot easily change careers because they've optimized for income, not options. They cannot relocate because they're anchored by property and schools. They cannot reduce work intensity because their spending requires their current income. They've built a life requiring perpetual high income, which is precisely the opposite of building wealth. Wealth isn't income. It's the gap between what you have and what you need multiplied by time. Every choice that increases what you need works against you with compound force. Munger's decision-making framework wasn't complex. It was rigorous. He didn't seek sophisticated strategies to overcome bad decisions. He sought to avoid bad decisions in the first place. His approach to evaluating life choices was systematic, rational, and brutally honest. Start with incentives. Before accepting any conventional wisdom, ask, who benefits from my believing this? When everyone tells you to buy a home, recognize that real estate agents earn commissions, banks earn interest, and an entire industry profits from your decision. This doesn't make home ownership wrong. It makes the advice suspect. You need independent analysis, not culturally reinforced assumptions. Apply genuine cost-benefit analysis. Most people consider only direct costs. Munger insisted on examining opportunity costs, second-order consequences, and compounding effects. That $50,000 wedding isn't just $50,000. It's what $50,000 becomes over 30 years at reasonable returns. It's approximately $430,000 in future purchasing power. Are you actually deciding that one day is worth nearly $500,000 in your 60s, or are you simply not running the numbers? Use inversion relentlessly. Instead of asking, will this make me happy? Ask, what does this prevent me from doing? A mortgage prevents geographic mobility. Lifestyle inflation prevents career flexibility. Early parenthood prevents risk-taking when risk-taking has highest returns. Status-driven consumption prevents savings. Make the invisible costs visible, then decide if you're truly willing to pay them. Demand specificity in your reasoning. Everyone does it isn't an argument. It's an admission you haven't thought independently. I'm supposed to isn't a reason. It's obedience to unexamined authority. It's the next step, isn't analysis. It's following a script someone else wrote. Munger would ask, what specific evidence suggests this choice serves your particular circumstances, values, and financial reality? Separate financial decisions from identity decisions. You are not your house, your car, your wedding, or your job title. These are resource allocation choices, nothing more. The moment you attach identity to consumption, you've surrendered rational analysis. Munger drove the same car for decades, not because he was cheap, but because he refused to let consumption define him. The mental freedom this created was worth more than any status symbol. Recognize that optionality has enormous value. The ability to change careers, relocate, reduce work intensity, take calculated risks, or simply say no to things that don't serve you, this is wealth. Any choice that reduces your options should be scrutinized mercilessly. You can always add commitments later. You rarely can remove them once accepted. Understand time horizons. Society optimizes for appearance and immediate social approval. Munger optimized for long-term outcomes. A choice that looks responsible at 30 might prove catastrophic by 50. Will this decision compound in your favor or against you? Does it expand your future possibilities or constrain them? Think in decades, not quarters. Practice intellectual honesty. You'll face enormous pressure to rationalize choices after making them. Cognitive dissonance ensures you'll convince yourself that your expensive degree was worth it, that your house was a great investment, that your lifestyle makes you happy. Munger's discipline was admitting mistakes quickly and changing course. If analysis suggests you've made a poor choice, acknowledge it and minimize future damage rather than defending it with motivated reasoning. Build in safety margins. Munger called this margin of safety, the space between what you need and what you have. Every choice that increases what you need reduces your margin of safety. Every commitment that requires sustained high income makes you fragile. Build your life such that you can survive and thrive even if circumstances change, because circumstances always change. Finally, accept that questioning conventional choices will make you weird. You'll be the person who doesn't buy a house when it's time, who doesn't upgrade cars when you can afford it, or who doesn't follow the consumption patterns of your peer group. Munger was comfortable being an outlier because he understood that extraordinary results require different choices than ordinary results. The fundamental insight is simple. Financial freedom comes from the gap between what you earn and what you need, compounded over time. Every unexamined choice that increases what you need works against you with brutal mathematical certainty. Every choice that preserves flexibility and optionality works in your favor. You don't need sophisticated financial strategies. You need to stop making systematically stupid decisions that society has convinced you are responsible. You need to question choices before accepting them, not after suffering their consequences. Munger's approach wasn't about deprivation or joyless penny pinching. It was about clarity. Know what you're actually choosing, including all costs and consequences. Then decide consciously rather than drifting into decisions because everyone else made them. The question isn't whether conventional life choices are wrong. The question is whether you've examined them honestly, or whether you've simply done what you were expected to do and called it a life. Most people never ask. That's why most people never achieve financial independence despite decades of high income. They made choices that felt natural, looked responsible, and compounded silently against them for 30 years, Charlie Munger asked. And that made all the difference.